When Americans talk about Sweden, you'll often hear the word socialism. But Swedes are quick to point out that is wrong. It is a welfare state here, with the government providing many of the things that Americans would expect to pay for, like a college education or a daycare or old age and family pensions, all provided by the government, but at the expense of murderously high taxes. So the question is, does the government work here? Might it work elsewhere? We have with us today Olof Ruin. He is a professor of political science at Stockholm University. And nice to have you here. You have spent a lot of time in the United States.
Yes, well, almost 3 years altogether, I guess.
In the United States.
Right.
When you talk to the U.S., people in the U.S., about the Swedish government, how, in simple form, do you explain it to them and the differences?
Well, I explain, of course, it's a liberal democracy as America is, but we have a parliamentary system, they have a presidential system in the United States, we have 5 parties, we have 2 parties, and of course we have one dominating party in this country, namely the Social Democratic Party, that's been in power now since 1932 with the exception of 6 years.
And has got this country in a situation where the government really provides more than half of the GNP. I mean, it is an enormous size of government compared to what the U.S. is used to, people in the U.S. are used to. How does that affect people here?
Well, I suppose there are some people who think there are too much of governmental services, but as a whole, I think the population like that. I mean, you feel that you have a security net for your daily activities. And don't forget that these things are not given out to charity. I mean, all people are entitled to the same kind of service, which I think is important, since if you are willing to pay so high tax as we are paying.
But the question that most Americans think is, when you have so much assured, when you have all the way through a college education assured, you have income security assured, job security assured, where's the incentive? What
well,
makes
there are so many other things in the world that are incentives except earning money. I mean, the prestige, happy life, family life, travels, reading books, going to theaters. There are many things that could be initiatives for working.
Well, I saw an interesting quote from somebody that I jotted down the other day, a critic of the system. It can be dangerous for one state of mind to get everything and have nothing to strive for, he said. And really, I guess the question, Americans are so involved with striving. It's so much a part of the American psyche, and yet it doesn't seem to be here.
Well, I do think there's very much of striving and competition here as well. I mean, partly, I mean, it's sort of good to be secure in a sense, because then you still can strive without the risk of really getting badly off.
You mentioned the tax system, the very high taxes. There is, of course, has been a very popular political movement in the United States to reduce taxes. Also the political movement here?
Not necessarily. Of course, there's disagreement as to the level of taxes, but it's very important that you sort of, the things you get out of the taxes you pay are generally in nature. That is an important difference for the United States.
Are of a what nature?
They're generally nature. Every person who has a child gets a child allowance, not only the needy. This is very important in understanding the social welfare system, how it works.
Yes, that
everyone benefits from that.
That it is for everyone, lower class, middle class,
But certainly there is disagreement in the pluralist society as to the level of taxation.
So somebody said to me the other day, well, everybody, it's a little bit like the United States, everybody wants to lower the taxes but keep the benefits. I mean, that's the age-old political problem for how, when you put the tax system in perspective, what does the average person pay in taxes here?
Well, I suppose a little bit half. I don't exactly know these figures strictly. I mean, but the marginal tax, as we say, is of course fairly high. And that is a problem certainly today. And I do foresee reforms in our tax system in the future. Not necessarily the government is going to get less in money through the tax, but a different kind of system I think we must get to.
So the average person would pay half in taxes or even more in some cases?
Probably a little bit less, the average person.
Yeah. So many people, there was a time when there were an awful lot of sociologists, everybody running over to Sweden, studying the system, saying, this is the system of the future. Would it work elsewhere? But it really hasn't exported very much, has it?
Well, now we get many sociologists here as well who are trying to find a decline and fall of the Swedish model. You know, in the 60s, we were on the top, and now they are thinking we are declining. I think we are slightly in the middle, not necessarily declining in our model, but certainly not at the peak that we were in the 60s.
You mentioned that it doesn't necessarily have a negative effect. What overall effect do you think? How has it changed the Swedish people as the welfare system has become more and more instituted in this country?
Well, as I say, people do feel more secure. I mean, one very important aspect of the Swedish welfare system is, of course, that we have almost no unemployment today. And I think this is utterly important, realizing now how the situation looks in Europe as a whole, where you have all kinds of fairly undemocratic movements getting extra nourishment because of the unemployment existing. There you have, for instance, the stability of a country is sort of somewhat affected by not having unemployment.
Does that mean it's necessary to limit immigration into this country? Because it seems to me if people, poorer people in other parts of Europe saw income security, job security, that you would have a lot of people wanting to immigrate.
But people very often overlook is that we are really a country of immigrants today. You know, 10% of the population today are descendants of immigrants or immigrants themselves. So we have a fairly liberal policy of getting immigrants in, now mostly because of political reasons today. But the ambition, of course, is to try to integrate them as much as we can. Sometimes we fail.
"25 minutes after the hour, I am back with Olof Ruin, who is a political science professor at Stockholm University, and we are talking about the social welfare state that exists in Sweden and how that differs from the United States, attitudes here in Sweden about it. And I was interested to hear you talk about general level of satisfaction. It is always very dangerous, as Americans always know, to look at polls. But I saw in, I believe, The Economist, a 1984 poll, and it said 81% of the people in this country agree that the state has become increasingly despotic at the expense of individual rights. That struck me as indicating a fairly large degree of dissatisfaction with the welfare state as it is developed.
Well, there are so many different investigations of this nature. Certainly that there are groups that are dissatisfied with some aspects of it. We also have figures saying in general people are satisfied. But certainly today, when you have lesser money available, there certainly are cracks in some part of the social welfare system. For instance, healthcare today is facing difficulties.
Yes, there's long delays
Right.
for some kinds of elective surgery, some kinds of doctor's care,
Right.
etc. And I suppose that causes
Sure, and of course the population is aging here as everywhere else in the world.
You talked about heterogeneous society. It is interesting to me that the Social Democrats, one party, has controlled the government in this country for such a long period of time, virtually without interruption, I think 5 or 6 years. Since 1932, correct?
Well, 6 years. Between 76 and 82, we had a so-called non-socialist government. Yes, but in other words, for a very, very long time. There was one man who was prime minister without interruption for 23 years, which is a record long time in the world of parliamentary history.
Well, yes, Margaret Thatcher may be moving on that.
Might well. Well, still has time to go.
She has a ways to go, yes. But it is interesting that it would be such an acceptance of one party for such a long time. Why is that? What is it in the Swedish nature that would be antithetical to
Sure,
America?
I mean, there are many reasons for that. I mean, I suppose to some extent good luck, good leadership, a fairly pragmatic party, being able to keep the internal peace. Also, there was a constitution we had earlier time that slightly favored the biggest party. This is not any longer the case. So there are many reasons for that. A very strong trade union movement in this country has been cooperating closely with the Social Democratic Party, but foremost a very pragmatic party.
Yes, but it would indicate to me that there was certainly an agreement, because it was during that period of time, from 1932 on, from the Depression on, that the welfare state grew so dramatically in this country. And that certainly would indicate a large degree of political acceptance for that kind of a movement. You have an election next year, biggest issues here, not tax reform?
Well, tax reform is certainly one issue. Probably also this kind of cracks in the social welfare system. Still, you had the wage earner fund proposal from '83 that the bourgeois parties, as we say, the non-socialist parties, are planning to abolish, dismantle, if they get into power.
You said something interesting, as long as there's enough money. I mean, any kind of political acceptance really depends on economic good times, doesn't it? If you got into a severe recession, another depression, then it seems to me this kind of a system might even be more vulnerable than other systems to very quick disaffection.
To some extent, you saw that in the late 70s, when, of course, there were many, many problems. The oil shock and the classical Swedish industries branches running into difficulties, and we had quite a debt at that time. Now, of course, partly because of good luck, partly because of good management, the economy is in very good shape today. But certainly we are all running a risk, and we are intensely dependent on the outside world continuously.